Hello there. Joe Biden. We know he's the president-elect. He won the election in the 2020 US presidential election, and he won it against Donald Trump, as we all know. And surprisingly, up until recent times, his transition funds have been held back by the GSA. Normally, within 24 hours of probably even the press announcing the presidential election winner, or whenever the election is almost over or roundabout over, or evident that it is over by the polls and the counts, the winner is usually announced by the press. And roundabout then, whoever the contestants are, one person will of course give in to the other. But in this case, Donald Trump, obviously, as we know, isn't conceding and isn't giving in, and rather is, carrying all the cases everywhere in so many courts and in so many states. But President-elect Joe Biden, because his transition funds were not, released and has at least up until recent times, he then had to plead to his supporters, and he says this. Here's the deal. Because President Trump refuses to concede and is delaying the transition, we have to fund it ourselves and need your help. Ooh, me and you, I guess. And of course, all Americans. If you're able, chip in to help fund the Biden Harris transition. Oh dear. And who is holding all of this back? Someone they call Emily Murphy, of course, under the authority of the current President Trump, inevitably. She's the administrator of GSA. She refused to sign a letter allowing Biden's transition team to formally begin transition work, and this has prevented their access to about $6 billion transition funds, which is normally funded by the federal government. So literally, they're putting their hands into the pocket of the states, and the state funds the transition. What are the transition funds used for? They're used for obtaining office premises, performing background checks on prospective cabinet nominees, working with the Office of Government Ethics on required financial disclosure, and conflict of interest forms for incoming nominees, salaries, establishing government email addresses, accessing classified information which might be needed to respond to emergencies that the administration confronts when in office. So technically, when they get into office, they should be hopefully set to hit the ground rolling and, off they go. But the transition fund is supposed to enable them be able to do that. But all the pointers and all the issues that have been raised, even by Republicans themselves or top Republicans, have literally started to show that there is a risk to the national security if the transition doesn't take place. Transition and the funds usually will take place in 24 hours once the president-elect has been announced. But now it's run over well over 22 days, and it's not like there could be national security issues. Okay, accountants. Imagine the £6 billion is given off out now with you. How would you set up a budget for £6 million to cover purchasing, office space, or securing office space, or paying for office space, carrying out, background checks and setting aside some float for emergencies, of course, and then as well setting out, salaries and all the checks that need to be done for all the nominees and all the recruiting that, needs to go on the background, transition process. You will then, of course, identify, or I will expect anybody that is trying to set up a budget for that to then start to look at, okay, how much would I be putting aside for each of the costs to ensure that by the time we've stabilized all the costs and listed out all the different sorts of expenses, we will hit the $6 billion. You add, you minus. But of course, it will need a lot of insight or a bit more insight to try to identify what proportion of that amount will go to salaries, what proportion will go to office rent, what proportion will go to, setting out the emails and setting out the checks and carrying out, whatever is required for us to be able to hit the ground rolling and, all the activities that need to be done. Then by the time we finish dividing and minusing and plussing, I would expect a bottom line of $6 billion. And I'm sure you will have it nice and neat. President Joe Biden, we can only say we wish you the best. Adios.